Imagine your whole life you never saw a sunset. Imagine never being able to see a baby smile, to see the seas ebb and flow. Imagine never being able to witness that remarkable catch, the controversial clear-out in the British and Lions match, and hear the Australian commentators clearly state the try will be overturned, certainly, for it never to be overturned. Imagine never hearing the fat bass line of a funk track, to wake up with the birds calling, to be harangued and beeped at during traffic. Okay, I can deal with that last one. And then imagine overcoming it all to prove that you are not only capable of being educated, but that you are, in fact, an incredibly intelligent person. Now imagine, 40 years after your death, you're not known for your writings or your advocacy work, but for a genre of really dumb jokes. I guess you can't always control your legacy, huh? Hello, and welcome back to the library. And before we get lost amongst the stacks, I want to introduce my guest this week, the best man at my wedding and a proud member of the Itty Bitty Litty Committee, Jason Midkiff.
Yo, yo, yo.
How's it going, Jay?
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah, we had a great day today so far. Yeah, you're up here in Vermont for the first time in 8 years, and I'm happy that we're doing this topic of them all.
I'm happy as well. I came all the way up here just to make a couple jokes on a podcast with you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, not going golfing or anything. No. All right, Jason, we've known each other for basically our entire lives. And I know you haven't listened to this podcast yet, but spoilers, it's about books and authors and their works and their lives. This one is one I have been waiting to do for a while because I knew a little bit about her life beforehand, but I knew that there was a lot more to it. And our first introduction to her was through, in my opinion, a pretty terrible movie. And then because of that movie, I think a whole genre of jokes started to come out, partially because of Family Guy sketches, right? Yeah.
That was a big one.
Yeah, the Family Guy sketch is pretty apt on the jokes there.
Some might even think they're true. Who knows what people are thinking these days?
And I don't think it's necessarily wrong or a bad thing to poke fun of anybody or even make a whole genre of comedy based on this person's disabilities. Some of the jokes are definitely cruel, but I think that we will make a point that even this person would have joined in on some of them, honestly. And even though this type of comedy isn't popular much anymore, I would like to think that after learning more about the person we're going to talk to and her work, these jokes are only becoming funnier, right? Anything you want to add before we get started?
I'm ready to party.
Okay, let's go. So Helen Adams Keller was born on the 27th
Boom.
of June.
Weren't expecting that one, were you?
Nope. I mean, I'm going to put this in the title, but yes.
Maybe they won't read the title.
They're just going to play it.
They'll just play it.
Yeah. She was born in the year of 1880 in June. She was born in a small rural town in northwestern Alabama called Tuscumbia, which is exactly how you pronounce that. It was now a dedicated seat of Colvert County about 13 years before she was born. This area with its large surrounding towns is just commonly known as the Shoals, which a shoal refers to a fast-paced section and the nature of the Tennessee River, which constitutes much of the geographical landscape in the region. So it's actually a pretty populated area as we sit in northwestern Vermont, where basically nobody lives. Helen's paternal side of the family comes from Zurich, Switzerland. Her great-grandfather, I believe, was Caspar Keller, and he moved to Maryland. His son, David Keller, bought huge tracts of land in northern Alabama, permanently settling the family down there in the turn of the 19th century. She was also lineage to some of the oldest families in the South as well. Her great-grandmother was the daughter of Alex Moore. Alex Moore was one of Marquis de Lafayette's aides, and Marquis de Lafayette was a French aristocrat who came to the United States to fight on the winning side of the American Revolutionary War. He's kind of an important figure in our history. And then, basically, Jason, he almost got his head chopped off during the French Revolution. Interesting dude. Her great-great-grandfather was Major General Alexander Spotswood, a British Army officer who served as the colonial governor of Virginia from 1710 to 1722. So, we're dealing with some pretty deep family lineage to the colonies as we can date back as early as the Revolutionary War times on both sides of her family pretty much, and even earlier than that in one side, which is wild, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Her maternal grandmother, so on her mother's side, her grandmother, was Lucy Helen Everett. And now this is where we're going to shake things up a little bit and add some southern spice to it, or that deep fried chicken goodness, or that sweet southern drawl, if you will. Because Lucy Helen Everett married a man named Charles W. Adams. And even though Charles was born in Boston, he eventually moved to Arkansas in 1835, where he would end up studying and practicing law, and even was a judge for a short period of time. He also 100% owned slaves and became a large cotton plantation owner and a slaveholder. So we're working with this right now.
That's a big thing to go to from having tea parties over there in Boston. Big move. Bold move.
Bold move. Some would say a lot of her family did a lot of bold moves. That means that the Civil War broke out. Chucky Boy here signed to fight under Jefferson Davis and get his ass kicked under the terminal Confederate States of the Americas, right? Which lasted for a shorter length of time than the Doritos Locos Tacos. Charles Adams would serve as colonel and then act as brigadier general for the Arkansas troops. And after the inevitable demise of the South, had to move to Memphis to practice law because he was forbidden to practice law in Arkansas because he refused to take an ironclad oath. The ironclad oath was something that was required to all federal employees, lawyers, and federal elected officials to swear upon entry of office that they had never supported the Confederacy and refused to do that because he was an honest guy. That's a cool guy here, right?
Yeah, sounds like it. Everything checks out.
Yeah, he 100% supported the Confederacy. What are you going to do, lie? What's worse, owning slaves or lying, right? Well, that's just on the mother's grandparents, right? Helen's father was Arthur H. Keller, right? And her mother was Catherine Everett Keller, nee Adams. So Helen writes that her mother was, quote, many years younger, unquote, than her father, and that she was his second wife. This family was also part of the aristocratic slaveholding class before the Civil War. So, yeah, her father probably owned slaves. She obviously never did. So in order to keep humans as their personal property in the Deep South, and I mean this is Deep South America, yeah, right, Arthur Keller joined the war. He became a captain in the Confederate Army and then lost. Any questions so far?
No, sucks to lose, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really
Arthur.
does suck.
Sorry, Arthur.
Yeah, it's okay.
Maybe next time.
Next time. Jeez. Hopefully there isn't a next time. Yeah. So, like I was saying, now the war was 15 years over by the time Helen was born. The society she lived in definitely had an impact on her life, though. Let's wrap up her family first and then talk about the pivotal moment that changed her life. Helen had two older half-brothers, James McDonald and William Simpson, and then two younger siblings, Philip Brooks and Mildred. I didn't have a second name for Mildred, so it's just Mildred. You don't get names like Mildred anymore, right? Both of whom were younger than Helen, and a bit younger too. Her sister was born around 4 years after she fell into her illness, and about 6 years after she was born. So her parents decided to try again after knowing what might happen, which is wild. I mean, that is wild. Have you ever heard of what happened to her at all?
No.
No? Why she got
not familiar.
Sick?
Nope.
No. Well, no, not familiar with what her life was about at all. Nothing about Helen Keller that strikes you.
Yeah, maybe a couple things seem a bit different, bit unique, right?
She's definitely unique.
Very unique. Yes.
Yeah. So, right now, we're talking about Helen Keller claims to have had a very normal and happy newborn to infant stage. She claims that she began to learn words like tea and, of course, water by saying things like wah, wah. And then when Helen was a very little baby, only 19 months old, well, we know what happens, I think, right? Let's just let Helen relay her tale. Quote, these happy days did not last long. One brief spring, musical with the song of robin and mockingbird, one summer rich in fruit and roses, one autumn of gold and crimson sped by and left their gifts, at the feet of an eager, delighted child. Then, in the dreary month of February, goddamn that February, came the illness which closed my eyes and ears and plunged me into unconsciousness of a newborn baby. They called it acute congestion of the stomach and brain. The doctor thought I could not live. Early one morning, however, the fever left me as suddenly and mysteriously as it had come. There was great rejoicing in the family that morning. By no one, not even the doctor, knew that I should never see or hear again, unquote. So, yeah, right?
Wow.
Deafblind. Crazy.
Yeah.
19 months old. Like, that must be horrifying for a parent to think of that. Modern doctors believe the illness was most likely meningitis, could have been caused by a number of ways. We won't get into what it could be because, you know, let's just say medicine in the Deep South in the 1880s wasn't great. It's definitely not great right now. We won't be calling anything that happens a bastion of health. There are a couple of things in this quote that really struck me. Firstly, as a parent, horrifying. This was in the time, well before anything we can call modern medicine we take for granted. And the infant mortality rate was astronomical compared to today, especially for the South. But it looks like, you know, under the current conditions that we're living in, we're just trying to bump those numbers up, right? Those are some rookie numbers. You got to go to the back room and just like whack a couple out. Oh, sorry, wrong script. I was thinking about The Wolf of Wall Street. Second, I wanted to look up when babies develop their senses. And all but for vision, all senses are pretty much developed in utero. Touch is developed as early as 7 to 8 weeks of pregnancy. Smell by 10 weeks in utero. Hearing is about 23 weeks. The sense of taste is basically right when the baby is born, as they have preferences to sweet tastes found in breast milk, and taste continues to develop basically throughout everybody's life. And then the only one of the 5 major senses that develops after birth is vision, which babies can see nearly 8 to 10 inches when they are born. But by the time they are 5 months old, babies should have developed most of their depth perception. By 2020, vision isn't fully achieved until you're 2 to 3 years old, sometimes till 5. You know, that's just some things I looked up quickly. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any questions there?
No questions.
So the other question I had when I was thinking about this trick is when do memories begin to fully form, right? The short answer: episodic memories or memories of specific events don't form until you're 2 or 3 years old. And what is referred to as autobiographical memories and the sense of self and personal experiences don't occur until you're 3 or 4. But studies have shown that some memories can be formed as early as in the womb that relates to things like sounds and smells. And in infancy up to 1 year old, you can develop brief memories that are stored in your brain that are crucial for formation, right? I wanted to ask this question because I wanted to know if Helen could have ever potentially remembered hearing or seeing anything. And the blunt answer is no. She never has claimed to have, nor I don't think was even possible, right? So all her life is blind and deaf. Not dumb. We'll get to that because everybody thinks she was blind, deaf, and dumb. Now, the father Keller would build a house for them to live. There would be a moderate-sized home for today, nothing like an enormous plantation, but still sizable enough for the large family. And with it was another separate and detached annex on the homestead where they, quote, servants, unquote, lived. More on those servants later. For pretty obvious reasons, having a child that cannot hear nor see is pretty fucking difficult, right?
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
I would say so.
I mean, geez, especially nowadays, but like especially back then. Many people in Helen's family also thought her pretty much stupid, which in modern day would be described as somebody with a mental learning disability. That's not the case. Her learning disabilities were purely physical. Helen would do her best to try to communicate as a young person, just kind of babbling a bunch, and honestly. This is what she had to say about her early childhood development and communication. And by the way, much of what I'm reciting comes from her autobiography, which is called The Story of My Life, which nowadays could probably be a title of a song from an original boy band or pop punk wannabes, and in fact is a song title of One Direction. So they stole it from Helen Keller. They stole it from a deafblind girl.
Those bastards.
They really are not original.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on. Quote, I do not remember when I first realized that I was different from other people, but I knew it before my teacher came to me. I had noticed that my mother and my friends did not use signs as I did when they wanted anything done, but talked with their mouths. Sometimes I stood between two persons who were conversing and touched their lips. I could not understand, and I was vexed. I moved my lips and gesticulated frantically without result. This made me so angry at times that I kicked and screamed until I was exhausted. I think I knew when I was being naughty, for I knew that I hurt Ella, my nurse, to kick her, and when my fit of temper was over, I had feeling akin to regret, but I cannot remember any instance in which this feeling prevented me from repeating the naughtiness when I failed to get what I wanted. Unquote. Yeah.
Wow. That's intense.
A lot of naughtiness. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, imagine like having to deal with somebody who literally cannot hear or see you, and then like they're just kicking and screaming. Like, you saw how my baby reacts when she's crying.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they start getting angry, and then it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, and then they go to the brewery with just two boys at the brewery and, drinks up the entirety of... yeah, and then drinks up the cooler and knocks down all the merchandise. Tries to drive home afterwards, and these are keys taken away from her. It was pretty reasonable to me that she would be incredibly frustrated about her situation. Something I wanted to extrapolate from this quote is that the quote itself, that she would touch the lips of people talking around her like all the time. Like, she would just go up to you and touch your lips when you were talking, which, like, there's a video of this, Jason. It's as bizarre as it looks like. And then she would actually develop a skill later in her life called lip reading, with her feeling your lips move.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah, that's her lip reading. It's okay to laugh at her literally reading lips with her finger, because it's absolutely as absurd as it looks. Imagine somebody who wasn't deafblind just sticking their fingers in your lips and like just fucking sitting there and standing there. Like, it's just the silliest thing in the world. For lack of a better phrase, Helen was as normal as any other early childhood could possibly be given her situation. She liked to run around and play, albeit with some supervision. During Christmas, she would be allowed to help in the kitchen and grind spices. She even grew jealous of her sister when she was born, her younger sister, and couldn't help to be jealous of all the attention. She had an old dog, a setter that was once a great hunter that presumably was retired from hunting because it would hunt with her father. Helen's father was known actually to be a good hunter and generally loved his kids. She even had what she would refer to as a childhood companion. And this is when the social class structure of the Deep South comes back into the story, because her companion was the child of the Kellers' cook named Martha Washington. And yes, she was what Keller referred to as, quote, a little colored girl, unquote. It's wild to me that this companion of hers was also named Martha Washington, after the first lady of the United States, and was once married to the largest slave owners in the colonies before being married to George, who was also a large slaveholder. So, yeah, I digress. But something to say about Martha Washington, no relation, is, quote, Martha Washington understood my signs, and I seldom had any difficulty in making her do just as I wished. It pleased me to domineer over her, and she generally submitted to my tyranny rather than risk a hand-to-hand encounter. I was strong, active, indifferent to consequences. I knew my mind well enough and always had my own way, even if I had to fight tooth and nail for it. Unquote. So, a bit of a fighter.
Yeah. Imagine getting into hand-to-hand combat with that.
Just swinging it.
You don't know where she's swinging.
I know. At that point, if she was just swinging, you just walk away and just watch her.
Or
swing.
she catches you and you go to sleep.
Yeah, I bet she's the type of person that had no sense of like how much strength she's being put in it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That overhand right's nothing to ignore.
Further on, this is what she had to say when they went hunting for guinea fowl hens, which I didn't realize that these hens hide their nests out of the way places, apparently. Guinea fowls are pretty cool. You've probably never seen one. They're pretty common in farms up here in Vermont because they eat ticks. Quote,
Good.
It was one of my greatest delights to hunt for the eggs in the long grass. I could not tell Martha Washington when I wanted to go egg hunting, but I would double my hands and put them on the ground, which meant something round in the grass, and Martha always understood. When we were fortunate enough to find a nest, I never allowed her to carry the eggs home, making her understand my emphatic signs that she might fall and break them. Unquote. Martha Washington's like 5 years older, and she has absolutely no physical disabilities from my understanding.
Yeah. It's not sounding good.
Now, to me, these two quotes clearly show the class structure here, right? Martha is definitely a more physically capable person, even though they were clearly taught to be subservient to a deaf-blind girl much younger than her. And Helen clearly took joy in bossing her around. Now, you might think this is just children playing. However, this quote from a letter from Anne Sullivan, spoiler alert, she's a future teacher and lifelong companion in the story, wrote about Helen's perception of race. Quote, on being told that she was white and that one of the servants was black, she concluded that all who occupied a similar menial position were of the same hue. And whenever I asked her the color of a servant, she would say black. When asked the color of somebody whose occupation she did not know, she seemed bewildered. And finally, she said blue. To me, again, this showed that race is something taught. Helen had no conception of the colors black, blue, or orange, or gold, or yellow, magenta, mercantile, fucking peach, or whatever, right? She just knows that she is white in this example, and her companion is black, and who is basically her earliest friend. And that must have been some sort of communication that was done and enforced in this structure. Now, again, this isn't also just This diatribe isn't stating that Helen Keller was a racist. She wasn't. She wasn't at all. We'll get there eventually, but her views were certainly tied to the privilege she encountered in her youth as a little white girl on a small plantation in the Deep South. And that privilege would be one of the reasons why her views changed, and pretty much the only reason why she was able to be her. Like, realistically, if it wasn't for this privilege, she wouldn't be Helen Keller. She wouldn't be a household name. She wouldn't be made fun of by Family Guy every season for whatever reason. Yeah.
That's how you know you made it.
Either South Park or Family Guy.
When you're on South Park or Family Guy.
Yeah, or The Simpsons, I guess.
That's how you know.
Yep. Because by the time she was around 6 years old in 1886, her parents hoped that they could educate their daughter. And her mother found some hope in Charles Dickens's travelogue that came when he came to the States. He wrote about when he came to the States called, quote, American Notes for General Circulation, unquote. You know who Charles Dickens is, right? Yeah, you definitely do. Great Expectations, Oliver Twist. You've definitely seen some Charles Dickens shit. One of the most famous writers of all time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In it, her mother recalled reading about the life of Laura Bridgman, who was deaf and blind and more than that, and was able to be educated. Laura Bridgman was everything under the sun. She also knew of Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe, who sadly passed away shortly before Helen was born, and honestly was a genuine badass in like every respect of his life from what I can read. And maybe we could cover him one of these days, but honestly, he might be a stretch for this podcast topic. Well, he pioneered a way to teach blind children. For our purposes, Dr. Howe was the first director and organizer of the Perkins Institute in Massachusetts Asylum, later be changed to the School of the Blind. Totally unrelated to us, but Dr. Howe also helped establish, and this is a direct quote, the Massachusetts School for Idiot and Feeble-Minded Youth.
What a name.
Yeah.
Wow, very creative.
Very creative, yes. Language is ridiculous to us today.
Tell me how you really feel.
That was just what they said for mentally disabled people. And it was also the Western Hemisphere's first publicly funded school for people who had mental disabilities. So at least we don't call them idiots and feeble-minded anymore. I guess that was just PG back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Just everyday talk, probably.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. A lot of hard R's being passed around. Jeez. Unfortunately for the Kellers, hard R there too, living in the Shoals is a long way from any school for the blind or deaf in those days, right? And her distant family members continued to sow seeds of doubt she would ever be educated. So Helen Keller and her parents took a trip north to Baltimore to an oculist who could potentially help her. He said he couldn't, but he knew somebody who could. Enter none other than Dr. Alexander Graham Bell. Does this name sound familiar to you at all?
I've heard of it.
Yes.
Once or twice, maybe.
Do you know who Alexander Graham Bell was?
I believe so.
Yeah. Do you want to guess?
No, I don't want to guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alexander Graham Bell.
No, I know who he is.
Do you want to guess again?
Telephone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
I didn't want to get it wrong. I'm like, I know this.
He's the guy credited for patenting the practical telephone. He also co-founded American Telephone and Telegraph Company, commonly known today as AT&T.
Thanks for that one.
Yeah, right. It's not his fault.
If you want your call dropped, go with the Bell Company.
Who the fuck uses AT&T anymore?
I don't know.
Is that even around?
I don't know if are they still in business.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
They get bought out by Mint. God. Who's the actor who's like in all the Mint commercials?
Oh, Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds bought out AT&T and also Wrexham. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess AT&T moved to Eastern Wales. Okay.
Yeah, well, they can drop calls over there then. Leave us alone.
Who's calling in Eastern Wales? Do
No
they have telephones over there?
That's why they have perfect business.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but there's so many places in like Wales and like Ireland that they never had telephone wires.
Wow.
Yeah. They just decided not to want them. And now that it's fucking moot points because they have cell phones. So gives a shit, right? Whatever. Before this world-changing invention of AT&T, he worked helping deaf children. And honestly, the laundry list of incredibly famous people Helen Keller becomes lifelong friends with is just absolutely enormous. Alexander Graham Bell would meet with the Kellers and examine Helen, determining that she was in fact capable of being formally educated, and he made a suggestion that would be world-changing for the 6-year-old child. He referred the Kellers to the Perkins School for the Blind in Boston. They took a trip up north to Beantown, and yes, Jason, Boston proudly calls themselves Beantown, and in Flick My Beantown, they met with the Institute's director, who helped procure a permanent live-in tutor. And if you guys think Flick My Beantown was gross, you have no clue where the innuendos are going to stop in the script. Basically, the whole premise of these episodes was to educate people on the life and works of a person who has a whole genre of fucked up jokes named after her, and Beantown is a frickin' stretch compared to some of the shit that's coming.
So she went to Beantown. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I hope she went there a lot.
Look, touch is one of the things that were the most important to her.
Yep. That wasn't the only lips she was reading then when you were talking about that before.
No.
Good for her.
Good
job,
her.
Helen.
Why
Way
not?
To go.
Yeah. It's an all-girl school, too.
Send it.
Yeah, seriously. So we're now back in Tuscumbia in March of 1887 with the arrival of the person who would be the biggest impact of Helen's life. Her name is Anne Sullivan, right? Born Johanna Mansfield Sullivan in April of 1886, so only about 14 years older than Helen when she met her in her family's home. Anne was born in Feeding Hills, Agawam, Massachusetts, which is southwest of Springfield, Massachusetts, on the border of Connecticut, near the infamous Granby Notch. When she was around 5 years old, she contracted an eye disease called trachoma, which causes pain, recurring infections, irritation, and scarring of the cornea over time. She experienced severe vision loss, and thereby was unable to read or write for the rest of her life, basically. Unable to read or write formally in the alphabet. Well, more on that later. Anne's mother died when she was only 8 years old, and her father found it too difficult to raise kids. So like the super chill dude that he went out for a theoretical pack of cigarettes and never came home. Anne and her brother were sent to the poorhouse at the Tewkesbury Almhouse, where the conditions were described as just deplorable. And not like deplorable like 2016 Trump voters deplorable. I mean like deplorable. Because within 3 months, her brother Jimmy died. Really like super happy stuff. Jimmy! And
poor Jimmy.
What?
Poor Jimmy.
Poor Jimmy. Anne wasn't left to just rot and die in this poorhouse. Fortunately for her and us listeners, right? She realized that getting an education would help her and learned that in 1880, the year Helen was born, a commission was going to investigate the conditions of Tewkesbury Almhouse. So, on that day they were there, she literally followed them around until somebody asked what she wanted. It's effective.
Yeah.
She wanted to go to school. That's what she said. She began attending the Perkins School for the Blind in October 7th, 1880 because of this.
Wow.
I know. Sometimes you just need to follow somebody around.
That's brilliant.
Anne was very different to the people who attended the school. For one thing, she was previously a homeless orphan who had nothing to her name. Most of the other people who attended the Perkins School for the Blind came from wealthy families and with resources, such as, like I said, families. That's a pretty cool resource in my view. The other, she was already 14 when she was enrolled and had absolutely no idea how to spell or write her own name. Like at all. No idea. Regardless, or in spite of her status and the hardships and the bullies in the school, Anne excelled. She even befriended the same Laura Bridgman who Charles Dickens wrote about, who at that point was in her late 50s. And I had to side note this because this is when I learned that Laura Bridgman was literally blind, could not see, could not smell, could not hear, and could barely taste due to a scarlet fever that she had when she was a very little child. It's like the worst fucking case scenario like that you could possibly have. Jesus, imagine having like none of your senses, that the 5 major ones. Back to Anne. She graduated valedictorian in 1886, which, as fate or coincidence would have it, was the same year the Kellers would meet with director Michael Anagnos of the Perkins Institute. She was approached by the director of this full-time paid live-in position, and frankly, what other prospects did she have? She takes the job. Any questions about this so far?
Nope.
No. Helen Keller describes the day when Anne arrived as the most important day of her life. This is how she describes in her autobiography, The Story of My Life. Quote, "Have you ever been at a sea in a dense fog when it seemed as if a tangible white darkness shut you in and the great ship, tense and anxious, groped her way through the shore and plummet in that sounding line, and you waited with beating heart for something to happen? I was like that ship before my education began, only I was without compass or sounding line and had no way of knowing how near the harbor was. Light! Give me light! Was the wordless cry of my soul, and the light of love shone on me in that very hour." Unquote. What fascinates me about this is her imagery here, right? She had never seen fog, nor a great ship. She learned this from somewhere, and that we will touch upon shortly because a lot of her writing has a ton of imagery. Also, Anne would help Helen as her assistant for the rest of Anne's life, or until she was too ill to help her. It would be a long friendship that both of them would take literally around the world. And this is important because every time we talk about Helen Keller, Anne is almost always there, with the few exceptions, right? So, any questions about Anne or Helen's relationship?
Nope.
Anne went straight to work teaching a new form of language to Helen, which I've seen referred to as finger spelling or finger playing for kids.
Go on. I'm listening. Go
Great.
on.
Essentially, the speaker would take the hand of the listener in this case, and they would spell out the words through physical gestures, like...
Was this in Beantown?
This will eventually be in Beantown.
Oh, not yet.
No,
this is before they went to Beantown.
Yeah, she had to prep before.
So this is learning to go to Beantown.
Yeah,
with the fingers. All right, got it.
Yes.
Continue.
Yeah. Just like any other alphabet, each hand symbol equated a letter. The first Helen was taught and learned, the first word was doll. But it would take weeks before she would learn that these words she was learning had significant meanings, and they were significant things that shaped her life and were part of a greater world around her. They weren't just to be memorized and repeated when somebody placed your hand to pass a test, realistically. And here we get that infamous water story. Infamous because anybody who watched The Miracle Worker now knows that almost all of Helen Keller jokes originate from this portrayal of this event. Jason, I don't know if you remember this, but we watched The Miracle Worker in grade school. The only scene I remember, literally, was this one because it was so absurd and so easy to make fun of when you're either somewhere between 8 to 10-year-old boy. To sum it up, Anne took Helen outside to a spigot and finger-played water in her hands. Helen came to the realization that water had a purpose, and then she started saying, "Water! Water! Water!" Remember that at all? No.
I'm sure that's exactly how it happened in real life.
It is.
Just like the movie.
Just like the movie. Yeah.
Show that to 8-year-olds. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. It's not like 8 or 10-year-old boys are cruel and they don't watch Family Guy.
No, they definitely understand through their own real life experiences at that point.
Yeah. They don't have the sense of, I don't know, other people have different experiences and hardships. Going on. Anne also first introduced Helen Keller to Braille. For whatever reason, and this could have been my own misconception, because I thought that whoever the St. Francis of Assisi school teacher who showed us that film told us that Helen Keller invented American Braille. It's not even close to being true. American Braille was invented by a blind piano teacher and tuner at the Perkins School Institute named Joel W. Smith in 1878. It eventually came out of favor in 1918 when the standardized English Braille was used throughout the English-speaking world. What I found really fascinating is that the Perkins School not only had a place in creating American Braille, it also helped and create and manufacture typewriters for this too. So Helen Keller and all the pupils from here on end have access to typewriters, which is how they wrote and read. It's like basically having a computer at any time. And that typewriter and Braille learning came in handy pretty quickly. It was like having that TI-89 that we were talking about earlier, or TI-93, and then most people just ended up downloading Pac-Man or Tetris on it and not even paying attention to class, right? Nowadays, they won't even let you use your cell phone. Remember when they said you want to have a calculator in your pocket? It's making us dumb. The year after Anne came to help Helen enrolled in the Perkins Institute for the Blind in Boston. Anne would accompany her. She proved herself to be an intelligent and capable student, and the director took a liking to her and would basically treat her as a poster child of success. She would be the central subject of the Perkins' annual report multiple times. Anne Sullivan, her tutor, did not like this, as Director Agnosis would embellish Helen's progress only very often and create unrealistic expectations because again, we're talking about a little girl who's deaf and blind here. We have to keep reminding ourselves that, right? Anne also rightfully believed that she lost her independence as soon as she came back to the Perkins School, because she came to realize that Helen and her would be inextricably linked for the rest of her life, and she would be responsible for her for the rest of her life. And that's the kind of shitty thing you do to somebody that young without telling them that really sucks, right? You're just stuck with this deaf-blind chick, yo. She's a little girl. Sorry. Imagine that.
Man.
And another thing I found fascinating in her education is that she not only learned English and learned how to speak more clearly here by lip reading. Again, this means she stuck her fingers on the lips of people speaking and tried to mimic them. She also learned common phrases and idioms in English. That's fascinating to me, because you don't learn that when you're learning a second language of English. That's one of the reasons why people say that people who speak English as a second language proficiently are better at English than local speakers because, because they don't say things like, she found that even though her early education was all over the map, she would bite the bullet and hang in there so that by the time she got long in the tooth, she wouldn't cry over the spilled milk of her being another dime a dozen deafblind person behind the 8-ball of life.
That's deep.
The idioms.
Yeah.
Helen was an adventurous girl and a bit of a handful at times. This is where being deaf and blind doesn't help. One story she shared was how that she went to, quote, see, unquote, Plymouth Rock. You know what Plymouth Rock is?
They're a good insurance company.
It's where the Pilgrims landed, right?
They sell insurance. Yeah, the Pilgrims have great insurance.
Yeah, they better. All those witches hanging around.
All those spam calls we get now.
She was like personally fascinated by Plymouth Rock and the Pilgrims, and the early history of this First Nation, right, of this young nation. When she found out that Pilgrims were just religious fanatics and not like super chill people, as a lot of people say they were, she wrote, quote, "I thought they desired the freedom of their fellow men as well as their own. I was keenly surprised and disappointed years later to learn that their actions of persecution that make us tingle with shame," unquote. Pretty true. They kind of sucked. Also, some guy sold her a replica of Plymouth Rock, which I found both cruel and hysterical. Cruel because he sold a deafblind girl a rock. Hysterical because, well, he sold a deafblind girl a rock. If you ever been to the underwhelming tourist attraction that is Plymouth Rock, I'll describe it to you right now. It's a large rock. It's barely a boulder. It sticks out of the sand in the beach a little bit. That's it. The dude sold her a tiny pebble.
What a hustler.
I know.
Gotta make a quick dollar.
Anne found that she loved the ocean, and again, her adventurous spirit got her in a lot of trouble at times. The first time she learned that the ocean had waves, she basically just walked right out there into the ocean and almost drowned because she didn't realize that waves knocked her down. Now, I did something like this when I was 2, but she was like 10 and couldn't hear or see. She also learned about horseshoe crabs when she was at the ocean, and even picked one up and carried it as a pet, insisting on whoever was with her to take it home with them, only to discover that on the way home, the crab, quote-unquote, escaped. Want to do the logical jump here.
Escaped existence?
Most likely, whoever was with her just told her they brought it and left it on the beach.
I wonder if she named it. That would have made it even worse. Like Lucky or Skippy or
my best friend Plymouth. These are pretty humanizing experiences to me because it happens to most kids one way or another. You know, like a lot of this happens to kids. Now we've gone on for a while, and this podcast is a literature podcast after all, right? Like it's about books, it's about authors. It's not just like hardcore lit, but like it might be like a stretch to just say that Helen Keller wrote an autobiography and that's what we're talking about as a main source. I've already stated that, you know, Helen Keller was a bit of a writer. And now we're in 1881. An 11-year-old Helen Keller decides that she will write a story for the director of Perkins's library. She writes a very short story that was first titled Autumn Leaves, but ultimately chose the name The Frost King. She hands it to director Agnes. He gets it published in the Perkins Alumni Journal and later in the Goodson Gazette, a weekly newspaper out in West Virginia. Turns out somebody also recognized that this story was very similar to King Frost Again by Margaret T. Canby. Like, very similar. This is because a series of story with this character, King Frost, is also the concept of Jack Frost, the same person. So this is where we get that. Well, the school didn't like this, and Helen Keller is accused of plagiarism, the 11-year-old. And what do you do when you have an 11-year-old who possibly plagiarized a very, very short story, like 2 to 3 pages, Jason?
Oh, you're in big trouble.
You are in big trouble.
Yeah.
Straight to jail.
Yeah.
Right
Not
in the
good.
shackles.
Not good.
The Iron Horse. That's right. You put her on trial. And Agnes and 8 other board members questioned Helen Keller about how she comes up with the story.
Can't wait to hear her answer.
One girl, 11, staring blindly at nothing, deaf, being questioned about a 3-page story she gave as a gift to the director for his birthday is what we're talking about here.
Wow.
Education has never been better than since then. Peak education. The entire time this quote-unquote investigation is happening, and for the rest of her life, Helen thinks that there was some grave mistake and that she didn't plagiarize this piece. It's probably because she's just a kid and couldn't have possibly plagiarized something she's never read before. There may have also been an instance through distant relations who may have had the story in question, like they had a copy of it somewhere. But at the point of the committee hearing, the book that may have contained the story was long out of the person's possession. It's definitely very similar and probably close to plagiarized as possible. I read it. Both of them combined are like 8 pages, dude. It's really almost spitting image shit. Some people think that she may have experienced something called cryptomnesia, which is when a forgotten memory returns without it being recognized by the subject, and that person believes it is something new or original to them.
Wow.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it was just an 11-year-old who just wrote the fucking story that she found inspiring.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah, Occam's razor said that she almost certainly had cryptomnesia and she was a psychic powers of some sort. Right? That definitely is the reason. One thing is for certain. This instance creates a rift between her and Agnes, which is, I think, for the better. Agnes isn't a creep here, and I don't really want to put any shade on him. I don't think there's any type of Tommy and Uncle Ernie status here where she becomes the pinball wizard and where Agnes is Uncle Ernie and fiddles about and takes advantage of her. But she does write that he wouldn't allow her to sit on his lap anymore, which nowadays is really inappropriate, but apparently that was really common for just the director of a school for the blind and the deaf, or just the blind, to let them sit on the lap in the 1880s. Cool shit.
Cool shit. At least it wasn't in Beantown.
It was in Beantown.
Oh, this was in Beantown?
This was in Beantown.
Oh, yeah. Felony.
Yeah. Nothing wrong ever happened in Boston with little kids and people of religious institutes that were their superiors that possibly committed crimes. There wasn't a whole thing in the 60s with the church on that. Moving on, Helen would eventually leave the Perkins School. Not for any nefarious reasons, my understanding. And that's it. That's all she does. She learns, she writes this one book, does the autobiography. Nothing else ever happens to her ever again. That's all you need to know, the water story, and that she went to the School of the Blind. Oh, wait, there's 7 pages left.
Happily ever after.
Oh, my God. How did I write 7 more pages, 8 more pages? There's a whole hour left.
Did you plagiarize it, too?
Oh, my God, kind of. I copy-pasted a lot of things on the internet because I was exhausted and a baby was crying for a whole day. And she's only 12 and she learns to be 87. Holy shit, we haven't even gone through most of her life. Wow. Do you have any questions so far?
No. I just want to begin.
Oh, okay.
Her life.
Yeah, her
wonderful life.
It's we're not even close to it.
No. We're
Okay.
just getting to the climax. The part with her in Beantown.
All right, well, I'm going to plug my Patreon. That's Lost in the Library Podcast on Patreon. Also, any questions, please send them in lostinthelibrarypodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram. Again, Lost in the Library there. And I have a Substack where you can follow me at Fil Deptula. That's just my name. All of it is currently under development, and everything there is free as of recording. Here are some sources, Jason. Here are the works of Helen Keller that I found and used. Some of it read entirely on ProjectGutenberg.com. The Story of My Life, Optimism, an essay, The Song of the Wall, The World I Live In, all by Helen Keller. The Frost King is on Scribd.com. PerkinsSchool.org, a bunch of stuff there. Helen Keller in Love, a novel of unthinkable romance by Chris Bordessa on Wired.com. Helen Keller's Favorite Food was an American classic by Brianna Lopez on Tasting Table. Incorporating disability studies into secondary U.S. history classroom, The Radical Lives of Helen Keller by Bradley T. Toland. HelenKellerInternational.com. Marxists.org. Oops, I spoiled something there. It's going to get fun here. Pop Culture and Enduring Legacy of Helen Keller by Lawrence Carter Logg. I'm just going to hold that one off because that one's a real spoiler. And some wiki sites to round out information because things were here, there, and everywhere about Samuel Gridley, Howe, Phillips, Brooks, and Sullivan, American Braille, My Religion by Helen Keller, and of course, Miss Keller herself. Jason, do you have anything you want to add before we end part one?
No.
Is this interesting?
Nothing to add. You've piqued my interest.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we did the things that people actually know about Helen Keller, right? This is what was known. Let's do the stuff that isn't as well known by her. Next story.